Thanks everybody for joining. I'm going to go ahead and get started. We got a lot to cover and not a lot of time, just got an hour. So you are in the Getting Started with ITOM Visibility webinar. So if this isn't where you're supposed to be, I apologize, but stick around. It's going to be fun. All right. So just wanted to let you know this webinar is part of the Live on ServiceNow interactive event series. You can see the schedule by scanning the barcode, and then my colleague is also going to paste in a link that you can open up directly. And then by going to the schedule, you can register for future events and hear from ServiceNow experts across not just ITOM, but all of ServiceNow solutions. Quick housekeeping. Everybody's line is muted. We've got the Q&A feature enabled. So if you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A. And I have my colleagues, John Mario and Steve, who will be triaging those questions and answering them. And if time permits, we'll take a couple of those questions and answer those live. Please participate in the polls. And just to let you know that this session is being recorded and will be shared on the ServiceNow community forum after the session. So you can go in and rewatch it if you have any questions that maybe weren't fully answered and you want to review. And then after the session, you will be prompted for a short survey. We appreciate your feedback and we incorporate your feedback. So please provide that feedback and let us know what you want to hear in the future as well. Quick introduction. My name is Derek Kitzelman. I'm an outbound product manager for the ITOM business unit here at ServiceNow. My area of focus is ITOM Visibility, Cloud Accelerate, and AIOps Leap. Been with ServiceNow for almost 8 years. Been on the platform for a little over 10 years, and just been in IT. I'm going to age myself for quite some time. My hair is going white around the temples, so yeah, I'm an old man already. My areas of expertise in the platform are around the configuration management database, or the CMDB, IT operations management, automation engine, so things like Integration Hub, Flow Designer, ITSM, and ITAM, and I'm really working on getting up and learning all of the AI capabilities and how to create those in the platform. Very exciting things that we've got going on around AI. I'm based in St. Louis, Missouri. There's my email address and my LinkedIn. Yeah, I see somebody celebrating St. Louis, I hope. Go Cardinals. And then also my LinkedIn. So, any questions, please feel free to email me and definitely, connect with me on LinkedIn. So quick overview. We're going to talk about ITOM Visibility and why, and do an overview of ITOM Visibility, talk about next steps, and then talk about some learning sources that you can go and further your knowledge around ITOM Visibility. So let's get into the why. When we think about, every industry, every company has a push for AI, and data, quality data really is the fuel to get the best results out of AI and workflow success, right? So when we think about in the platform, whether it's, improving change management, right? De-risking those changes, being able to respond to incident and triage those effectively and reduce mean time to recovery, right? From an AI ops perspective, reducing that mean time to detection and having the context of what those events and alerts are and being able to resolve those in a quicker time. And then, definitely from a security perspective, being able to maintain an environment that's secure. You need quality data inside the CMDB with business context to be able to really get the best results out of all those workflows. So, I think everybody or a lot of people see CMDB as a four-letter word. I know when I was a customer, and trying to build a CMDB, dealing with, the kind of the bad outlook that people had on the CMDB, right? So why do CMDBs fail? I think one of the main reasons, and it's at the top, is really a lack of governance, right? I probably made this mistake, and a lot of CMDB process owners make a similar mistake of trying to discover everything without having the governance and the interaction with the different engineering teams to ensure that you're identifying scope up front before you even try to go out and discover anything or populate the CMDB. Identify scope, who should be involved, what are the potential issues with the CMDB when those issues arise. What are the processes and procedures and who's responsible, right? For remediating those data quality issues, right? So that's a huge roadblock and contributing factor to why CMDBs fail. When we think about the scope, we need to really identify those data sources and automate the acquisition of that data, right? Not tying the goals of the organization to the CMDB scope, right? So it shouldn't be discover to discover for discovery's sake, right? Really need to put those guardrails around that governance and pull in data to help drive outcomes, better outcomes that are tied to organizational goals, right? CIO, CTO, CEO initiatives. I think another challenge, and I made this mistake as a CMDB manager, is customizing without really understanding what is supported out of the box, right? Really getting to know what the data model is and figuring out, hey, can I already populate this without having a customization, or is there some type of related table that I can associate to my CI to be able to drive the outcomes that I need? And then, too much or too little data, right? The critical few versus the critical many, inaccurate data, that begets lack of trust in the configuration management database, right? And then, having, processes that are not tied to the actual CMDB. So doing changes without requiring a CI associated to it, that can really, what's the point if you're not going to leverage the data, right? And when we think about data acquisition, automation is critical to success, right? If you're not automating the acquisition and population of the data, you potentially relying on manual processes. You run into issues around duplication of data that's not classified appropriately, or data that's just unclassified and then incomplete, and ultimately you don't have the data that you need to make the decisions that you need to make, right? So poor decision making result is a result of poor data, right? And so automation is key to success in the CMDB. So real quick, want to pop a quick poll here for you. Let me get that poll going. Here we go. So, where are you currently in your CMDB journey, right? Are you planning? Are you in the initial steps of implementation? Is it full speed ahead? You've got your arms wrapped around it and you're on the journey, or did you join this call because you're really unsure of what a CMDB is, right? And I have to admit, when I stepped into the role of configuration management, I I knew what the acronym meant, but I really, had just an ITIL foundations on it, so I didn't really understand exactly the role that I was stepping into. So I understand that sentiment, right? Um, so yeah, I appreciate your feedback. It looks like we've got 67 of the respondents that are already responded. Those other, 70% or so, or 30% or so that are left over, please respond to the polls. It's been up for a minute now, so last chance. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. So here, just, some results. It looks like 11% are planning, 29% are in initial steps, and 57% are full speed ahead. And 3%, there's two of you that really aren't sure what a CMDB is. I appreciate everybody's, participation in that poll, right? Okay. So let's talk about CMDB, and let's talk about ITOM visibility and helps you become full speed ahead on your CMDB, right? So, you know, ITOM visibility really is that foundation to generating a business aware or service aware CMDB, right? And I'm not going to go through and talk about each one of these around here. This is just a screenshot to introduce those. Let's jump into each one of these features, right? So the first one I want to talk about is really discovery, right? ServiceNow Discovery really helps you, automate that data acquisition, improving the data quality, and an enabler to get the benefits of the CMDB, according to all of the data sources that you need to acquire, and being able to execute on those business processes, right? So whether it's the cloud or on-prem, whether it's cloud native like Kubernetes and containers, we have patterns, out of the box patterns, to go out or manners to get that information into the CMDB. And we've implemented the Discovery Admin workspace to really facilitate the rollout of Discovery. So being able to, create those discovery schedules, execute on those discovery schedules, and really identify, you know, move into that day two operations of, okay, now that I've got my discovery schedules running, let's go out and figure out where my errors are, and not really just looking at a huge list of errors, but using the machine learning capabilities within the platform to group those errors together, bubble up those significant errors to the discovery admin so they can work with the appropriate engineering teams to resolve those errors, right? And really it provides also not just the ability to manage discovery schedules on an ongoing basis, but powerful insights like Shazam insights, so you can understand how many IPs you're scanning, which ones are alive, which ports are open on those administrative ports like SSH, WMI ports, SNMP ports, HTTP ports, etc., that are open and responding during those scans. And when the security team wants that information, we now have the ability to generate that report inside the Discovery Admin workspace with other powerful reports as well. Another thing that's cool about the Discovery Admin workspace is, prior to, the Discovery Admin workspace, it was really word of mouth to understand when features were coming out. Now, inside the Discovery Admin workspace, Discovery admins can see what visibility applications are available, which ones are installed, and which ones require an update, right? And then also links, interactive links within the Discovery Admin workspace for learnings, whether those are blog posts or videos, etc. So easy access to information to help the Discovery Admin. So when we think about the results of discovery, right, it really is a four-step process. When you create those discovery schedules, identify those subnets that we want to scan. We go out and scan those. We look for open admin ports, 22, 135, 161, 80, 443, etc., right? And then once we've determined which one of those admin ports are open, we're going to go and execute a command to classify those. So in the case of 22, that could be a load balancer, it could be a network switch, or it could be a Linux Linux distribution, right? And if Linux is open, 22 is open, it responds to a Linux command. Now we know what we're working with. we can go and identify that, do we already have that record in the CMDB? And if so, we're just going to update the deltas, or we're going to create a new CI if we don't already have that record in there. And then we can go out and we can do that exploration. So we can pull down the OS details, what version, what distribution, pull in CPU, the hardware information like memory, disk, is it talking to storage servers, right? And then pull down installed software, running processes, TCP information, and really go in and create a complete and accurate CMDB. And if there is let's say a MySQL server running on that Linux box, we can, based off of the running processes that we've discovered, we can kick off a secondary discovery. When we see MySQL process running, we kick off a secondary discovery and pull in those database instance details and establish a relationship to the CMDB, so we get that dependency mapping. So we know that, MySQL is running on that Linux box. So another thing that we have is capabilities around cloud discovery, right? So, a lot of the times we get customers asking, or potential customers asking, why should I discover the cloud, right? Well, there are a lot of business outcomes that cloud discovery enables, whether it's regulatory compliance, bring your own license to the cloud and be able to effectively manage software asset management, not just on-prem, but also in the cloud. FinOps, being able to understand what you're spending in the cloud and then optimize your spend in the cloud, right? Especially in those lift and shift situations. And then, if you think about cloud, security is paramount. These infrastructure, these resources aren't running inside your data centers. So you really need to make sure that you're securing those. And then, of course, being able to manage certificates that are out in the cloud and be able to effectively triage issues as they arise, because it's not just because it's going to the cloud that you're not going to have issues with your resources and services in the cloud. So when we think about, cloud discovery versus OS level discovery, right? When we think about the cloud, it's metadata discovery. We're pulling in, availability zones or resource groups. We're pulling in virtual networks or VPCs. We're pulling in virtual machine instances, right? And then we're also pulling in additional information. And then when we think about OS level discovery, really that's, what I talked about in the previous slide, is really getting those OS level details and creating a Windows server record or a Linux server record, right? And then when we think about that cloud metadata discovery, not only are we pulling in the virtual machines and the VPCs and all of that landing zone for your AWS, your Azure, your GCP, OCI, IBM, public cloud accounts, but we're also pulling in that IaaS information, right? Those virtual machine instances. We're also pulling in platform as a service. So, things like application as a service, whether it's web as a service, database as a service, and then also function as a service. So Lambda functions, Azure functions, and then container as a service, right? So bringing all of that information into the CMDB so you can understand, what resources are associated to those accounts, right? And then not only are we bringing in those resources, but we're also bringing in their tags. So those key value pairs that will tell you who the owner is, what application it's supporting, what cost center, so on and so forth, right? And then when we think, that OS level discovery in the cloud, that's the ability to bring in, for those virtual machine instances, those details around the operating systems that are running on those VMware or VM instances, right? So we can get, software installation and metering, Oracle Glass discovery, certificate discovery, file-based discovery as well. And then, from a service mapping perspective, be able to, do top-down and ML-based service mapping as well. So another capability is, with ITOM Visibility is our ability to discover Kubernetes clusters, right? So we have three different methods of discovering Kubernetes clusters. The first one is pattern-based, right? So being able to execute patterns against a Kubernetes cluster to bring in all the details about that cluster, right? Now, there is let's call it a barrier sometimes to being able to do pattern-based discovery because you need a token bearer or cloud credentials to be able to do that. And you may run into challenges with the Kubernetes cluster owner that they don't want to give you that, right? It also setup is somewhat manual by creating a serverless discovery schedule, but it really is best suited for, self-hosted. And then our second innovation with Kubernetes Discovery was for Kubernetes clusters, EKS, AKS, GKE that are running in Azure, AWS, GCP, etc., to where we automatically generate those serverless discovery schedules to pull in those details of those clusters, those managed clusters, but then leveraging cloud credentials instead of actually a token bearer, right? So setup is automated and you don't need those credentials. And that is best suited for those cloud Kubernetes offerings, right? And then we came out with Kubernetes Visibility Agent, which used to be called Cloud Native Operations, right? But the Kubernetes Visibility Agent is actually an installation that allows you to run basically a microservice to tap into the event pipeline in a Kubernetes cluster to capture those details and then send those over in a push method to the instance, right? And it's easily installable inside of a Kubernetes cluster, either using a Helm chart or a Kubernetes YAML file. And really, this is probably the best method for capturing Kubernetes data. So, when we think about it, it brings in that real-time information into the Kubernetes cluster, and then with the Q3 2025 deployment, not only are we bringing in the Kubernetes details, but you can also enable service mapping in a Kubernetes cluster so you can understand how those different microservices or containerized workloads inside of a cluster are delivering, a business application. So you understand that context, right? And when we think about just the architecture, right? We've got the informer, the microservice that's tapping into the API server. It's subscribing to admin type events inside that cluster, sending it to a queue, and then we've got another microservice, the sender, which is making API calls to the platform and updating the ServiceNow CMDB for that Kubernetes cluster near real time. All right, let's talk about discovering via another agent-based method of discovering. Now, this is associated to servers and endpoints, but we have what we call agent client collector for visibility. So, prior to agent client collector for visibility, when we were talking about discovery, it was only agentless. So we needed a mid server inside the customer's firewall, and we needed credentials to be able to authenticate. So we would scan those devices and pull that information in. Now with the agent client collector, we have the ability to install an agent running on Windows, Linux, Mac OS, whether it's server or endpoint, and be able to pull in those device information, similar to what we're doing with discovery. But this really helps with, zero trust environments where, someone won't give you credentials, or maybe there's access issues from a network perspective, and a push manner is better. When we think about those devices that may not be connected to a VPN or maybe sitting in the DMZ, right? So really getting that scalable visibility populated in a push method instead of a pull method, right? And when we think about it from an architectural perspective, we have two manners of integrating those agents with the instance and populating the CMDB. We've got a mid-based architecture where the agent is establishing connection to a mid server within your firewall, and then that mid server is pushing the data from those agents over to the instance. And then we now, as of I believe Q2 of this year, or maybe it was Q1, we have what we call the ITOM Cloud Services, or ICS. So this is really just Kafka infrastructure running inside of our data centers where your instance is hosted. And, basically, inside the instance, you generate a registration key. That registration key is assigned to a topic inside of the Kafka infrastructure. And then, the agent running on Linux, Mac OS, or Windows is basically a publisher to that that topic, and then the mid server is a consumer, right? And that basically allows for that midless architecture. So those disconnected agents, right, that maybe in the DMZ or out in running on a laptop that's not connected to the corporate VPN. So now that we've got that data inside the CMDB, we really need to build business context around that data, because just having data and application dependency can help improve change, can help improve incident and drive improve software asset management. Really, it's getting that business context, right? Understanding not just that I have a server in here running a database, but I know that that server is supporting my order management business application, right? So, with service mapping, that really helps build that business context in an automated fashion, right? To improve those data-driven decisions, right? And we have multiple methods of doing service mapping, right? We've got tag-based. So when we think about discovering those cloud environments, we can leverage those tags where it's got an application tag and an environment tag, group those together and see what resources are tagged with those, and build the service context based off of those tags. And then we also have ML-based mapping, right? When we think about ML-based mapping, we're using the machine learning capabilities in the platform and analyzing discovered data, especially running process data and TCP data, and then grouping those processes together based off of that TCP data that we've discovered, right? And providing candidates to the mapper so they can go out and help build those service maps and operationalize them. And those are really the easier approaches to service mapping. And then, we have top-down mapping. So that's that more surgical, mapping to where we're actually, from that entry point, let's say a URL, we're traversing the infrastructure in a horizontal, in a vertical manner, and building out the service context. It is more time consuming and takes longer to get there, but it is more surgical and really appropriate for your mission critical services. So, like I said, being able to map services in minutes via tag-based service mapping for your cloud environments, right? Whether those are your public cloud providers, your private cloud being VMware, Nutanix, and even Kubernetes or OpenShift, right? We discover those tags for those resources, store those in the CMDB, and then we can, you create tag categories. So that's normalizing on those different tags or keys, right? So let's say, one team, you have a standard and it's, associated an application or a service key, but, different teams are putting app or application or something, service, right? So you need to normalize those, and we do that with tag categories. The environment key may be ENV or environment spelled out, right? So by associating those different iterations of those keys to a tag category, we can normalize those and then relate those two tag categories together, application and environment, and create a tag-based service family. And from there, we can look at those candidates and really create those application services really quickly and hundreds at a time, right? And then operationalize those and get those to inside the CMDB so you can start driving better change, better incident management, right? Better AI ops, etc., right? And then, you know, another way to map in minutes is really using that ML based, right? And when we think about the architecture of ML based, right, we're leveraging discovered data either from agent client collector or horizontal discovery. And then we're also leveraging data from service graph connectors like the AWS Service Graph Connector, right? And pulling in that data, storing it into the CMDB, so that running process data and that traffic data, and then performing ML clustering, right? So which processes are talking to other processes? We're building those candidates. And then we have something called the ITOM content services that customers can opt into to get updates on running processes that maybe we don't have a process classifier or a discovery pattern for, and we can create we can ingest that data from the ITOM content services on a weekly basis, and also come with service fingerprints. So when you're looking at an ML cluster, if it's a bunch of processes, you may not understand what that is as a service map, right? But by overlaying service fingerprints on there, so let's say something like our librarians did the lookup and they say, hey, I see all of these different processes. They're all part of SAP business objects. So let's create a service fingerprint. So when there is a grouping, we can overlay that service fingerprint and they can understand that SAP is the publisher, business objects is the application, or the business application that those processes represent. That way, the service mapper can go to the owner of SAP business objects and work with them to understand, hey, is this 40%? Is this 70%? Is this 100%? What do we need to do to operationalize this so they can get that operationalized and help drive those better outcomes? And then, top-down service mapping, right? The more challenging one, this is where, it is also a four-step process, right? So this is where you create an application service record, or now it's called service instance record. You identify the entry point, whether that's a URL, etc. We do host detection. So from that URL, we're going to do a reverse DNS lookup. Oh, it's this IP. We have this IP. It's actually a VIP on a load balancer. So we're going to go ahead and run a pattern to figure out what the pool is, what the pool members are, and then we can go on to the next level, right? And then that CI identification, and then basically establish connections between all of those. So when we think about each one of these stages, we're saying entry point, host detection, CI identification, and then try to figure out what the connection is. And then we repeat that process at the web layer, the application layer, the database layer, so on and so forth. So that way you're really identifying which one of those CIs in the CMDB are supporting your billing, your order status, your consumer analytics, so on and so forth, right? And building out that service mapping in an automated fashion. And it's very precise. So another challenge is that customers have that we have a solution for is expiring certificates, right? So when you think about a certificate, it's generally supporting a business application, right? Those TLS certificates are supporting a business application, and if that TLS certificate expires, you potentially run into an outage, right? That service is no longer available, right? So we have the ability to go out and discover those certificates, store them in the CMDB, and kick off workflows to ensure that those certificates get renewed in a timely manner to reduce any issues with that, right? And when we think about, certificates, the validity of those certificates is drastically reducing, right? It used to be, I think it was around 2019 timeframe, certificates were, had a 5-year validity. Then they reduced down to 3 years, and now I believe it's 398 days. So a little bit over a year. And there are estimates that by 2029, those certificates will have a validity of 49 days. So, if you're thinking about hundreds or thousands of certificates that you need to manage, doing that in a manual fashion is just, you just have to throw bodies at the problem, right? So uh, with our solution, right, our certificate inventory and management workflows, we have the ability to do discovery, whether that's via port-based or CA-based via APIs or even URL-based for those certificates where you may not be doing discovery, right? For that infrastructure, maybe in the DMZ or hosted in an environment that you don't own, right? That you can't get credentials on, right? So we discover those certificates, populate the CMDB, not only with the unique certificate, but where we discovered those, right? So you get that context. If that infrastructure where we discovered that certificate is associated to a service map, now we have the business context, right? And then we auto-generate proactive tasks based off of a 30, 60, 90-day threshold. And then we have out of the box catalog items that, those certificate owners can request that renewal of that certificate. And then based off of the details in the request, we have automated routing policies that will route those over to that CA for signing, right? And then, we do integrate with like the Acme protocol. So if a CA signer, we don't have an out of the box routing policy, you can route that through the Acme protocol and send that over to, Intra, Sectigo, or even internal CAs like Microsoft CA or even, EJB CA, right? So really it's just, being able to, automate that. And we've got some really cool things coming in, 2026 around automating, that autonomous certificate management. So automating this process end to end, so you can be sure that your certificates are renewed in a timely manner and avoid those outages. So another challenge that customers have is with firewalls. Being able to discover firewalls, it's difficult to get credentials to those devices. So being able to talk to the management interface of those firewalls and pull in not only the management details, but the device details and also the policies running on those firewalls, right? And then, you want to make sure that, out of those policies that are out there, you want to make sure that you're automating those or auditing those on a regular basis to ensure that they're still needed, right? So with our firewall audits and reporting, we have the ability to discover those firewalls, the policies on those firewalls, and then auto-generate audit requests and assign those out to those policy owners so they can audit those in a timely manner. And then if there are changes that need to be made, whether they need to be just deleted or updated and remove maybe a port in that firewall policy, you can do that and really make sure that you're tracking that audit on a regular basis. So, I discussed our ability to discover tags. We also have the ability to, audit those tags with our tag governance application, right? So being able to go out and, discover those tags through discovery and then creating audit tests to go out and have um, those resource owners validate that those tags are well. Actually, we analyze those we discover those tags, and then we can create policies inside the system to say, hey, I need to have these 5 tags: owner, application, environment, cost center, and something else, right? Whatever it is, right? And then based off of that, we run an audit on those discovered tags, and where there are failures on those audits, we route those tag audit failures over to the owners of that resource so they can identify what the appropriate tags are, and then you can actually kick off remediation workflows to go out and update the CMDB as well as the resource out in the public cloud. Currently, we support tag remediation in the cloud for AWS and Azure, right? So tag governance to help you ensure that your tags that are implemented are following your tagging strategy, right? We also have the ability to generate Oracle reports based off of discovered Oracle software, right? So We have patterns that have been, or pattern extensions that have been added to our Oracle patterns around database and middleware to go out and discover, let's say not only the Oracle database details, but the options that are enabled on those, because those all are consuming a license. So, the ability to, discover those Oracle resources, and then quickly generate a report to make sure that you're always audit ready from an Oracle perspective, right? And when you think about, once Oracle knows that you have the ability, that you're audit ready, they're much less likely to come and audit you, because they've done it a couple times and they didn't get any money out of it. So there's no value there for auditing, right? So when we think about Oracle data class, Oracle data acquisition, right? We look at those different Oracle database options and licensing details for database and middleware, and then even Oracle Java now consumes licenses, right? So it's being able to acquire that data, right? Discover it, and then automatically generate a report, so you can be ready for an audit within minutes, right? And this is a store application, and in all of these, except for discovery and service mapping that we're talking about, are available on the ServiceNow store. And then when we think about, having multiple ways to go out and discover data, whether that's a service graph connector, horizontal discovery, agent client collector, Kubernetes visibility, cloud-based discovery, et cetera, right? You have potential for multiple sources, and you want to make sure that you can leverage the multi-source CMDB capabilities that we have in there, so you can ensure that you're leveraging identification and reconciliation rules to identify that golden CI, right? And then also being able to look at those multiple data source values in the CI, right? Without having to go to those other tools, right? And then if there are, any type of data discrepancies, we have the ability inside the CMDB workspace to identify where those discrepancies are, and you can go out and determine, which one is the best one to create that golden CI, right? So really, it's all about, auto-populating that data, right? Starting with ServiceNow visibility capabilities around, discovery, certificate inventory management, service mapping, Kubernetes discovery, populate that data, and then we have service graph connectors that will help you enrich that data, right? And really, ultimately, what you get is that single system of record with a single data model on a single platform and a single architecture, right? To help you to optimize your workflows within the platform. So we've got a second poll here. If you could, let me pop that poll real quick. And let's pop that. Sorry, real quick. Let me get this. But really quick, while I'm populating this, or while I'm launching this, got to go back here and let's launch this. The second poll, as a result of this webinar, so the things that you've seen around ITOM visibility features, which one do you think you'll implement next? And this is multi-choice, so go ahead and identify everything that you think you will be approaching or implementing next, right? Especially for those who are thinking about planning and really in the initial phases, and even those who are got your arms wrapped around the CMDB. You may not have everything implemented that I showed in this webinar. So what are the things you think that you would implement next? And John, while folks are answering this, are there any questions that we need to
Yeah.
Answer live?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had great interactions throughout the session, and specifically there was a lot of interest around Kubernetes discovery and also discovery of certificates in Kubernetes. So one question was about the possibility of discovering OpenShift cluster certificates and potentially installing the secrets in there?
Ooh, that's a good question.
As far as I'm aware,
Uh,
I'm not still aware of an out-of-the-box way to automatically installing those secrets in the clusters.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a good question. We'll take that as a follow-up and we'll post out when we post the recording. We'll take that question as a follow-up and post that out in the comments section of the event, the webinar event on the community site.
Yes, and we're going to post the link soon. I will do that very quickly. And then another question, which is still related to, in general, discovery of the Kubernetes certificates. There's one question from Vinay. We have to discover Kubernetes certificates which are local to Kubernetes infrastructure. Which option is best? Cloud discovery, or CI certificate discovery, or some other options?
Yeah, I once again I'm not positive on that. I'm not. I I want to say we still don't have the capabilities to do certificate discovery. I'll need to look at both the patterns that we have as well as I'll reach out to engineering from a Kubernetes visibility agent on whether or not we have the ability to do certificate discovery. That's a great question, and we'll post a follow-up to that question as well.
Yes. And okay, I feel like we can go ahead with the next section and we'll take the remaining questions at the end.
Okay, perfect. All right. Yeah, so let's talk about next steps. Really what we have is a call to action, right? We really want you to, be able to talk about the importance and really discuss the importance of full visibility within your organization, right? Especially for, folks that work for organizations where CMDB may be a four letter word, right? How can we help how can visibility help your organization, right? We talked about a lot of features today. A lot of them are really helpful to establish that visibility, to build business context, so you can uh, you know uh, get better outcomes within IT and beyond, right? Um, and then leverage. We also want you to understand the learning sources, learning resources, and be able to leverage those and when to use each feature that you saw today. And then, we've got 5 steps for deploying a successful and healthy CMDB. So we're going to review those 5 steps in the next slide, but also want to make sure that engage a service partner, right? Because self-implementation, if you never implemented a CMDB, it's not easy, right? There are a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of challenges, and a service partner, whether that's ServiceNow or one of our many partners in the ecosystem, they've done it before, and they can help you get to value and really teach you how to fish, right? And I have to admit, when I was a customer, I was responsible for migrating away from our existing discovery and service mapping solutions over to ServiceNow. And there are a lot of things that I just didn't think about, right? And that partner really helped us, really understand, what it is we need to discover, right? And not that mistakes weren't made, but it really helped us avoid a lot of the mistakes up front, right? Um, so use those partners out in the ecosystem to help you do that initial setup and get to value quicker, right? So when we think about those 5 steps that we mentioned in the last slide, right, for deploying that healthy business aware CMDB, right? Set your direction. Um, make sure that where you're headed with the CMDB is aligned to your goals as an organization, right? And make sure that you engage those teams, right? Whether it's Windows engineering, Linux engineering, Unix engineering, network engineering, middleware, DBAs, network security engineering, right? Build those, and even some of the application owners, right? Help build that governance model, engage those teams, and meet on a regular basis, right? Because once you implement, your first thing, your first scope, you want to expand the scope of the CMDB that are tied to your direction, right? So you need to continually meet with those teams to build that governance model, right? And then, design your data model, right? Understand the existing data model and figure out where you potentially may have to make some changes, right? And then operationalize that CMDB. Make sure that when they go into the cab, the cab is saying, hey, you have to have a CMDB associated to a change to be able to get your change approved, right? And really think about ongoing strategic alignment and redefine your direction on a regular basis. When company priorities change, you want to make sure that your CMDB is aligned to that strategic direction, right? And really organizational change management is the key to success, right? The organizations have to be willing to change to be able to get to the business benefits, not just out of the CMDB, but out of ServiceNow as a whole, right? Doing things the way you used to do in ServiceNow platform, maybe isn't the right way to do it. So being willing to change as an organization to adapt and improve, right? Okay, had some click in there that I didn't do. So, think about, some of these questions before you actually go out and discover, uh, anything before you turn on Discovery, right? It's like, what do you want to accomplish, right? What is it that you want to accomplish, and what is the best approach, and are there any constraints, whether those are network access, security access, and what are some of the assumptions, right? Assumptions may come back to bite you. And then why, right? What are the business outcomes? Why do we want to do this, right? And then think about measuring, right? You want to make sure that you're measuring and realigning, right? So what are the important things that you need to track to make sure that you can show value back to leadership, right? Because you need leadership buy-in to be successful within the CMDB, and you want to make sure that you can continue to get their buy-in to improve the scope of the CMDB. So you want to make sure that you're tying what you're doing back to those strategic business imperatives, and you want to make sure that you can measure those and show those back to leadership so you can continue to get the investment that you need. Come on, next slide. So so how do the strategic initiatives map to the CMDB, right? So, when you think about in enabling employees, to work seamlessly in a remote environment, right? That's any organization, right? Do my employees have a VPN client on their laptops? Is there hardware that power, and software that powers the VPN up to date and from a secure perspective? When troubleshooting occurs, right? When you have a VPN outage, how do I quickly determine that cost, right? So those are some of the use cases to think about that when you're thinking about that strategic initiative. And then, how does the CMDB help map back to that, right? You need an accurate and current inventory, right? You need to understand what software is out there from an end user compute perspective, and for the entire operational estate, right? So how do you acquire that, right? Or can you get that through an agent? Can you do horizontal discovery, so on and so forth? Um, so really thinking about, how do those, what does a strategic initiative map look like? Identify those strategic initiatives. What are the use cases? And then thinking about how the CMDB maps back to that, right? All right, so let's think about some learning resources. Where can you go to enable yourself more on the ITOM visibility solutions that you've seen today, right? One thing to think about is Now Create. So Now Create is an amazing resource, and I believe it's now all on ServiceNow University, where you can do training, Now Create, etc. Right? But really, it has resource guides that will help you think about your planning, right? Help you identify risks, right? And it's a repeatable methodology, and it's outcome driven, right? So it's really that step-to-step guidance, those resources to help you. And it's not just visibility, right? It's all the ServiceNow solutions, right? From the different BUs, right? Um, so think about Now Create as an excellent resource to where you can, get help with, setting up ITOM visibility and all things ServiceNow. And then we also have the ITOM Visibility Resource Library. So this is a post out on the ServiceNow community under the ITOM Product Hub. And really it's like how-to blogs, how-to videos, webinars, process guides, workshop presentations, troubleshooting links, right? We make sure that we update this on a regular basis and add new content when it's available. And it's really kind of a single source of information out on the community to where you can just get in, hyperlinks and jump straight into YouTube videos on, how to set up AWS credentialless discovery in the cloud, right? Other things like that, how to set up, automated routing policies for certificate management, what are the different approaches for service mapping and how to best do those, right? So blog posts, videos, webinars, process guides, all of those things that are available in the resource library, right? And then, use the LOSIN webinars, right? Every month, we do at least one webinar. And the month of October, we're doing two webinars. This getting started, right? As well as we're doing a webinar next week or the following week, I believe it is, on the 21st, around certificate inventory management best practices and how-tos, right? So understanding and more in depth of what certificate inventory management is, what those capabilities are, and how to get to value quickly, right? So sign up for our recurring LOSIN events, live on ServiceNow events. Yeah, and if you want to see any of the previous um, uh, recordings of our live on ServiceNow webinars for our ITOM Visibility, Cloud Accelerate, and AI Ops Leap, right? You can scan this barcode or open this link and get to see past webinars. And then, we have a lot of content for customer success, right? There's knowledge, there's now support, so you can report issues, right? With knowledge, you can go see, you can sign up to go to the conference, and then you can see some of the recorded events, right? Support portal, you can get report an issue that you may be having. You can search the knowledge base, look at known errors. And then manage your instances, right? Then, now learning ServiceNow University, right? Getting those fundamentals on-demand classes and even some that are led by instructors, and also get certificates for the training that you take and manage your certificates. And then the Now community, right? So we've got forums that are active, articles that are published, questions from users, right? And responses to those questions out of people who've done those in the past, right? And when we try to make sure that we are updating, with blogs on a regular basis when new features come out, right? And then there's the idea portal. If there's an enhancement that you would like to see, you can post that out on the idea portal. And then, within, we have the customer success center, right? We've got product documentation. I talked about Now Create. We also have the developer portal. So you can look at, app building guidelines, API documentation, coding best practices, etc. And then a whole bunch of additional content down below, podcasts, YouTube, ServiceNow.com, and other third-party resources, right? And you'll get we'll post this deck out to the Live on ServiceNow community post as well with the recording of this, so you'll get this. And then, thinking about putting AI to work faster, right? We've got ServiceNow Impact, right? So, we've got training and certification and expert services. So by scanning these barcodes, you can get more information that'll help you get the value out. And out of that, I just want to say thank you to everyone. Thanks for your participation, answering the polls, and your engagement and your questions. And once again, the recording will be available along with the deck, and we'll get some of those answers to those questions that we couldn't answer in this session. Thanks, everybody.